Amazing stuff, and something I was not familiar with that was happening in our state. So we are at our final presentation of the day, and we're kind of rounding out today's conversation about indoor agriculture with a few different perspectives on food access and what that could mean for some different businesses or organizations. So I'll ask the three panelists to come on up here, if you wouldn't mind. When we think about food access, one of the great opportunities that indoor agriculture presents is closer opportunities to fresh, nutritious, healthy food. And so we wanted to get a few different insights from people who have businesses or organizations that they work with that might utilize technology like this. So John Jiggs Dicey is the president of the North Dakota Grocers Association and is here representing the perspective of the North Dakota Rural Grocers Initiative, kind of thinking about some of those local, small, rural grocery stores that may not have opportunities or easy access to fresh, nutritious food. Taylor Sievertson is with the Great Plains Food Bank. She is the Ending Hunger 2.0 Health Impact Manager, so looking at a variety of different strategies that address hunger and food security issues. And then Drew Ballstead is the General Manager for Rhombus Guys Pizza. So you might think pizza, fresh produce, but they have some really awesome salads, microgreens on pizza, and all sorts of good stuff. And he's also a super awesome home culinary enthusiast. So excited to have the perspectives today. So to kind of get us started, you know, I did some brief introductions to each of you, but would you just tell us a little bit more about who you're representing, what your involvement is with grocers, Great Plains Food Bank, and Rhombus Guys? So John or Jiggs, would you prefer?
I answer to both. I have not been able to get rid of my nickname. So I'm a fourth generation grocer. My great grandfather came from Norway in 1884, and in Foreman, North Dakota, so down the southeast part of the state. And 45 years I worked in the business, grew it to 4 stores, rural North Dakota, small town stores, and had the opportunity to sell, and I got out, and then found that if I moved, I told someone, if you move 5 miles away, you become an expert. And the opening at the North Dakota Grocers Association came up, and I thought, well, I can do that. I can talk groceries, and I can visit, because that's what I've done all my life. And one other aspect of that is the Rural Grocers Initiative, and that is a offshoot of the North Dakota Rural Electric Cooperatives, and their initiative is to serve their area, which is the rural part of the state. So that's kind of how we got into the rural stores.
Awesome. Thank you. Taylor?
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting us and for considering the perspective of our food access and food security organizations. I have the great pleasure of serving as the director of Ending Hunger 2.0 at the Great Plains Food Bank. And we are the only food bank in the state of North Dakota and also serve our neighbors to the east, Clay County, Minnesota. And, you know, we're really doing traditional food banking. You know, about 50% of our work is food in, food out, thinking about how we can acquire surplus food from the network and then distribute that through our partner agency network of over 200 food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters that serve their neighbors all across our service area. COVID really uncovered, or rather, exacerbated and in some ways illuminated some of the disparities that our neighbors were facing and highlighted some of the cracks in our food systems and our economic systems that led people to need food for the first time ever in some cases. So we serve about 1 in 6 people in our service area and don't just do food in, food out because we know that food alone doesn't end hunger. So we really try to take the responsibility seriously that food security is at the heart of what we do. And in order to meet food security, we really have to work at the intersection of hunger and its root causes. Yeah.
Fabulous. Thanks, Taylor. And Drew.
Thanks, Megan. As she said, my name is Drew. I'm with Rhombus Guys in downtown Fargo here. We're a local pizza restaurant. You know, a couple of young entrepreneurs started us a long time ago. Not that long, I guess. And, you know, we try to focus on things that are local. We try to source as much as we can. Obviously, that's not always possible, but especially like she was kind of saying with COVID, it's really kind of shown the shakiness of the supply chains and the way that we're able to source things. So, being able to take that as local as possible helps from a restaurant perspective, and it just tastes better.
Absolutely. So, Jigs, if you want to get us started, so thinking about the rural grocers or just the grocery industry in general, what kind of challenges do you face with regards to fresh food access?
Well, I've been thinking about this after you got a hold of me. For years, we had a marvelous system in place. I would order groceries on Monday, and they were there on Tuesday morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we got them on the shelf. We got the produce on the shelf. We did all that, and it was very efficient. We could argue about when I say efficient, it might not have been because the waste was also huge, because I would have to order a case of something where maybe I only could sell half of that, especially in a small rural area. So that was the issues that I would have. We threw a lot of food. You'd be amazed at how much produce gets thrown. It'd make you sick. Well, now the thing that's happened with COVID is the distribution problem that we're having, and the big players, the U.S. Foods and Cashwa and the trucks you see going down the road, they don't want to stop at these places anymore. If you're off Highway 2 or if you're off of I-94, they don't want to go there. So we now have a real issue in rural North Dakota of getting product to them. And maybe we'll get later, I can talk about some of the things we're working on, but it's hard to get the product at a reasonable price in a quantity that you can handle and get it at the time you need it. And it's really, really in tough shape right now. The distribution is bad.
Taylor, can you comment a little bit about the pantries and the 200 partners that are part of the Great Plains Food Bank and their issues with fresh food access?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, certainly echoing those same sentiments around staffing shortages with some of the bigger players that are moving produce and fresh food have led to some of those places just not being stops on routes anymore. And so what that's meant for our organization is we have to think differently about how we can get fresh produce into those spaces, or depend on local growers or people who maybe wouldn't typically transport or distribute food, and tap into those in new ways. But it's certainly, we have not been immune to those same challenges that you've mentioned.
And Drew, are there any challenges that a Rhombus Guys faces with regards to access to fresh, nutritious foods?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of the challenges that we face as a restaurant would be the same that Jigs was talking about. Supply chain interruptions, that kind of thing. Fluctuating prices, not being able to get products, having to change from one supplier to another, especially on the produce side of things. It's been, it's a perishable product. It takes, it's very perishable. So, if it takes a long time to get it there, it's not going to be good quality. And that's why we've gone to, local suppliers, indoor suppliers, getting our lettuce from places like Larry's, to shorten that supply chain and to make it as fresh as possible.
So each of you has commented on some of the challenges that you're facing with fresh produce. So looking at a system like this from Eden Grows, talk a little bit about what kind of potential you could see something like this or a system of this type providing for your respective organizations or industries. Maybe we'll start with Drew and work our way back.
Yeah, I mean, the potential is amazing. I mean, from a restaurant perspective, obviously it doesn't get any fresher, right? And when you're selling food to somebody, obviously you want to have the highest quality possible, right? And there's a quote from Thomas Keller, who's a famous chef out of California. And basically the quote is paraphrased, if you and I are chefs and we have the exact same amount of skill, if I can get better ingredients, then I'm a better chef because it tastes better. And I think that, this type of system and kind of all the things that we're talking about are emblematic of that. And if you can get better, fresher ingredients, it's going to taste better. And from a restaurant perspective, that's everything.
Absolutely. Taylor?
Yeah, I'd say at its core, food banking is about finding efficiencies in how to get food to people who need it most. And food security is really place-based, neighborhood-based, community-based. So when we think about opportunities to really leverage technology that is very nimble and very movable and small in many ways, we really open up the opportunity for people to have more control over their own food security.
And John?
I had the opportunity.
Shifting back and forth with your name. I hope you don't mind.
Confusing them now. I've got two personalities. My wife says I got 4 or 5. But I had the opportunity to visit with Jeff yesterday, and I think he thought it was going to be a 5-minute phone call. It was an hour, and he was freezing in a parking garage somewhere. But I quizzed him on this system a lot, and I'm kind of the guy that maybe was telling Larry it's not going to work. But that wasn't really what I was trying to get at. I was trying to learn about it. But and we talked about the Hornbach. Everybody here knows what the Hornbachers is. It's the largest, probably has the reputation for the best produce and all that. How does a system like that work there? And but then going out to rural North Dakota, where we have ice, you have miles in between stores, and I think that's where this probably has its best application. Not saying, we did talk about, for herbs and that. And I know that larger grocery stores, have suppliers, but the quality isn't good. I actually worked for Hugo's up in Grand Forks for 1 year. And that was an area where they had problems. It didn't hold up very well. If they could do that in their own stores, excuse me, I could see that would work. So I believe that this system has potential. I really do. I don't know enough about it. I'm the guy that still thinks, it has to be, you have to be able to get it, supply has to be regular, it has to be good, and the price has to be competitive. Those are the 3 things you really have to make sure that you're able to do.
Taylor, I understand that some of the food pantries across our state may lack access to refrigeration to have even any sort of fresh produce. So can you comment a little bit about that and what a system like this could look like, where you could harvest in an immediate time for your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So over the past 4 years or so, we've been able to really close that gap. 4 years ago, we learned that about 25% of food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters in our state did not have access to refrigeration. And through some wonderful funding that became available, we were able to really increase the availability of fresh produce through those partners. But not all of our partners are open every single day, distributing food every single day, because about 70% are run entirely by volunteers. So technology that sort of helps grow food for you would really allow those volunteer-run organizations easy access to fresh produce right there in their pantry. Checking on it 5 minutes a day is just about as much time as they'd need to spend in the pantry. Mm-hmm.
Jigs, you made the comment about the price has to work. It has to function from a price perspective. So I wonder if you and Drew could both comment on what kind of things you could see growing in an environment like this that might make sense from a price perspective for your respective industries. I mean, I think fresh herbs immediately because that is a higher value crop, but what are some things that you could see working in grocers or in restaurants that would make economic sense for you?
Well, I think, we're still a meat and potatoes state. So your basics, if you can grow your lettuces, product like that, maybe some root vegetables. You did talked about that as well. You in a rural area, you're probably going to be more, more limited. I mean, I see on the sign you can grow watermelon and all that kind of stuff. Well, I don't foresee that being the thing for rural stores. But I think you could, if you could give somebody green or leafy vegetables every day and supplement it with other items, I think that would be great. I think and this system can do it, evidently, according to Jeff. The smartest guy he knows.
Drew, what are your thoughts from the restaurant?
Yeah, I mean, herbs was the first thing that came to my mind. Even now, you know, we go through a lot of herbs, but there's still wastage because of, you know, just not being able to go through enough stuff, or, you know, it comes and it was frozen, you know, as the delivery guy was bringing it out in the -50 winter, you know, it hits the air and it just all dies. So having it on hand and being able to harvest it at will would be, you know, amazing for a restaurant. I think some of the other things, like it says berries and that kind of stuff, those would be really good too, because again, very perishable. Bars go through it, but, you know, sometimes not always at the level that you need before it goes off. And, you know, for a restaurant, it's a bad thing to be throwing away product that you could have used or that you weren't able to use in time. And I'm sure it's the same in the grocery.
I'm going to ask another question, and I think we'll have a little time for maybe one or two from the audience if anybody has one. So I'm a dietitian by degree, and so very interested in getting people to eat more fruits and vegetables. And as Dr. Shetty shared in his presentation, we fall woefully short on people eating the recommended amounts of fruits and vegetables that we should. You talked about some issues of quality, maybe flavor might be an issue. So what are some of the things that you think about with a system like this, having opportunities for more flavorful, fresh foods that might get people more excited about eating those things?
Well, one thing that I tried to do, especially later on in my grocery experience, was tried to support the local farmer. And this was always just a summertime deal. He'd plant in May, and then hopefully in August sometime we would have, you know, peppers and, you know, tomatoes and sweet potatoes and sweet corn and all that. And to cultivate that with a grower and to try to get them to understand that I need this product on, you know, certain days, and I have to rely on you to be able to deliver, realizing that their season is only months maybe or a month long. But in that time, I knew, and the customer knew, that Joe Blow was my grower, and they knew he grew the best green peppers around. That had value. I mean, I might pay a little, and I tried to pay my growers what I would have to buy it from the warehouse. So I didn't try to cut their price because they were local. I tried to say, I showed them my book. I said, here's what I can buy it for. Sometimes they say, no, I can do better. And I said, well, okay, then you're a good negotiator. I'll do a little bit more. So there is a value there, and the customer appreciated it. And if we could do that on a 12-month basis, that would be really good. The grower has to be educated too on how to sell to retail. And that sometimes is hard for them to understand. That would be if NDSU could do a course on that, that would be great.
Taylor, what are your thoughts on that, getting people more excited about eating fruits and vegetables?
Yeah, gosh, I think food brings people together. And in the case of food pantries and food shelves, these are really sometimes at the heart of communities all across the state. We see a lot of food pantries that are in your church basement, where you might be celebrating with some kind of church basement casserole sort of meals here and there. But really thinking about how to use these as educational tools in pantry settings. We do a lot of recipe creation and working with Extension and other partners to do nutrition education, and being able to see and touch and feel the food that you're talking about and then use it in your own home is such a powerful tool.
And Drew?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big thing, trying to get people to eat more fruits and vegetables. The way I do it is I put it on pizza. And that tends to, that makes the medicine go down a little easier. But I think that, part of it, I think that especially, around here or just in general, I don't think people are comfortable, cooking those types of things. So I think that, we spoke about it a little bit, where they get some fresh squashes or that kind of thing, into the food bank. And I'm like, do people know how to cook it? Do they know how to make it, to its optimal state so that it actually tastes good and it doesn't taste, like a hard piece of something that they don't, So I think that there's an education aspect to it as well, teaching people how to actually cook it and make it its best.
I love what both of you shared there with regards to the education opportunities, and this is something that might get people excited to see it, more open to learning about it, trying it, tasting it. That's fantastic. Any questions from the audience? If not, we're getting very close to happy hour, and I can see the look on people's faces. I will just ask each of you, I always like to round out a panel by kind of just providing an opportunity for each of you to share kind of some parting thoughts, anything that wasn't asked today that you'd like folks to walk away with, just something to think. And I've gotten both the guys to start, so I'll let Taylor kick us off with parting thoughts.
Thank you, Megan. You know, I think that there are a lot of friends in this room who value innovation as much as we do at the Great Plains Food Bank. And I think innovation makes space for putting equity first and really thinking about whenever there is an opportunity to create more for more people. I think the phrase here is rising tides lift all boats. The same is true for our neighbors in need. So thinking about equity at the center of innovation is really our goal. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk more about the Great Plains Food Bank.
Awesome. Drew?
Well, I think that, indoor agriculture and these kind of things, getting those supply chains, like I said, closer is something that's super important. And, supporting farmers like Larry is important for everyone personally, but also as a business, it's important as well. So, you can go to your local restaurant and ask them, where do you source your lettuce from? Where do you get your things? And make suggestions, or if you know people that are doing it, and then support those businesses that are supporting things like indoor agriculture. I mean, that is a huge.
Excellent. And Jigs?
Well, when I said there, about all the bad things that are going out there with distribution, that there are some things that we've been able to do with our rural grocery initiative is, our legislature is probably one of the most conservative around, and to get them to come up with the idea that maybe we need to help the rural area more than just do lip service. And really at the last session, we were able to do some things. So I think they understand that there are deserts out there. Walsh County, is that where Grafton is has started a co-op where they have a hub store, a decent sized store in Grafton. They are supporting 3 other smaller stores in the area. They're buying together, getting a better price, and they're distributing it out to those stores. They're actually buying locker systems that you go and you call in an order. The product gets delivered, and you can have frozen, you can have produce, and you can have dry grocery. These locker doors, they fill it up, they give you the code, you drive up, you hit the code, the doors open. They're refrigerated, frozen, and dry. You get your product. And so that's very innovative. And the other thing is they're doing with the distribution is they're working with the Postal Service and Great Plains Food to have the Postal Service. They're going to all these little towns. And we're working on that, and maybe Nancy knows more about it, but I'm not sure where that's at. But to get the Postal Service to actually listen to us, and now they're interested to the point where I think they're willing to try. So there are things you can do if you have people willing to think outside the box and do stuff.
I love it. Innovative, support local, all great stuff. Would you all please join me in thanking this fantastic panel? Thanks, guys.